We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
A new year dawns, and with it, the hope for something better. 2021 was, for many people, a washout. It seems that the year was marked by COVID restrictions, anti-liberty legislation, and above all else, numerous attempts to weaken the founding documents of the United States. But fear not, for with a budding new year, we each have the opportunity to once again set the world to rights. In the 4th century BC, the oft-called father of history, Herodotus, wrote these words, quote, "It is better by noble boldness to run the risk of being subject to half the evils we anticipate than to remain in cowardly listlessness for fear of what might happen." End quote. And dear listeners, as ever, that is what it takes to create the type of world you want. Courage to face our fears and noble boldness to take the risks that have instilled said fear. Herodotus was right 2,500 years ago, and he's right now. Or perhaps we should consider the words of the philosopher and statesman Seneca, who said, "He who is brave is free." And in this time of making resolutions, I think this could be the best goal of all. For freedom, although it can be fleeting and must be constantly reinforced, is the most noble goal of all. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Liberty Nation radio show here on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides, and I'm here to wish you the very best and bravest Happy New Year for 2022. On today's special episode, we're figuring out the economic game plan and whether America can survive another year of President Joe Biden. We asked Joe Schaefer which way the America First movement is heading. We have longtime host of Liberty Nation Radio, Tim Donner, presenting the very best of our signature Say What segment. That's one for the ages. And of course, as always, Scott Cosenza is talking liberty and detailing the big cases for the coming year. I'd like to take a brief moment to say a special thank you to our listeners out in Cadillac, Missouri on WATT 1240 AM and 106.1 FM. Happy New Year and thanks for being part of the team. Remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news, analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Well, it's a brand new year with plenty of things to look forward to and a chance to wipe the balance sheet clean, or so hopes the current administration. Congress has passed a number of bills, each of which seem certain to add to the mounting American debt. And while Republicans must shoulder their fair share of blame, it's ultimately the president who steers the national bus. And folks are beginning to ask themselves the all-important question, can America afford another year of President Joe Biden and his expensive and expansive policies? Well, there's no one better placed to answer that particular quandary than author and economist, Mr. Andrew Moran. Welcome back to the show, Andrew.
Thank you for having me.
So what's the deal? Can the average American look forward to a better or worse financial year for 2022?
Well, just as a side note, when it comes to your opening promo, the Federal Reserve, I wish they would wipe out their balance sheet and, all of my economy. But yeah, for your other question, according to many of the surveys, the most recent one came from the Federal Reserve Board of New York, the survey of consumer expectations. And everyone is bearish in the economy right now. They're looking ahead to 2022, and they're seeing 6% inflation by the end of that time. They're looking ahead to 2027, and they're expecting, high inflation still. They expect their financial conditions to worsen.
Wait, I thought inflation was transitory, Andrew. I thought it was merely transitory, not 5 years plus.
Hey, man, they retired that word now. So that word is stricken from the record. But overall, yeah, no one is expecting a positive year in 2022, perhaps not even in the stock market, now that the Fed might remove the spike punch bowl from investors.
Okay, I mean, it's often said that the inflation, it's a tax on all living things. It's the creeping expense that devalues what you already have and makes it harder to stay ahead of the game. How much is the average voter impacted by this 40-year high inflation animal?
Oh yeah, dramatically, because just look at the main two components of the CPI. That's food and energy, which is why they have the core inflation rate, which removes those two. But anyway, so they account for most households' budget. So look at food. Food overall, the food index was up more than 6% in November. If you go within that, everything was up across the board. Apples, bananas, meat, dairy, eggs. Those account for large aspects of the average American's kitchen. So that's gonna impact their wallets considerably. Energy, gasoline is up 38%. Electricity is up 6.5%. Natural gas has been up 50% over the last year. So everything is costing more to the consumer, and that impacts them greatly. No matter how many people like Paul Krugman contend that high inflation it doesn't impact low and middle income people, that's completely preposterous. That diminishes their purchasing power, makes everything cost more, hurts their wages, cost of living skyrockets. So no, so they're gonna have a bad or a rough 2022 and perhaps even 2023.
I think the question that everybody wants to know is, how about tofurkey?
Hey man, hey, that costs I think up here in Canada, I think it's $13 for about probably about this size of a tofurkey.
That's $13 too much, Andrew. Now, without giving anyone actual advice, Andrew, in what ways have folks over the years shielded themselves against rising inflation?
Well, I spoke to a market strategist the other day, and he was telling me that over the last year, many investors have tried to shield themselves from inflation by doing a few things. So a lot of them have poured into equities. A lot of them bought REITs, or real estate investment trusts, where you're buying an income generating investment fund that invests in property. A lot of them actually even delved into cryptocurrency. According to this strategist I spoke to, he was telling how a lot of investors have swapped gold and silver for crypto, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, to because those that they function as deflationary investment tools since they've skyrocketed, I think 40, 50, 60% over the last year. So those are a lot of things that people are doing to shield themselves from a higher cost of living and to protect their assets. If you go into a savings account, you're just throwing money away because the real interest rate is negative considering the high inflation and the near zero interest rate. So if you're just putting money in a cash account, no matter if it's an online savings account that provides a higher interest rate, you're still losing money. So you have to go into the stock market to help protect your capital, and that's one of the chief goals of a low interest rate environment for central banks. Because the lower interest rates, you just have to go into the stock market. Although I will say this: what's interesting in Sweden, because they were one of the first countries to have sub-zero interest rates. They wanted people to go into the stock market, but what the reverse happened, where consumers were actually putting money into their microwaves and under their mattresses because they view that a negative interest rate environment is a sign that the economy is in the downturn. So that's how they protect their income.
And is the United States heading into negative zero territory at any point in the future?
Probably not, because how high inflation is. There's a lot of expectations that the central bank is going to begin raising interest rates as late or as early as June of next year to help quash inflation. If you remember the 1980s, when Paul Volcker, when he was helming the Federal Reserve, he dramatically raised interest rates to as high as 20% because inflation at the peak was at 15%. So by raising interest rates, that takes money out of the economy, which is one of the chief factors of inflation. You want to have less money in the economy, so prices start coming down. Because when in this market you have excess capital, and that therefore people are chasing too few goods with more money.
I'd like you to act as a Cassandra for us and foretell the future using your economic analysis and tools. So cast yourself forward to 2023. What will folks be talking about? What will we be talking about 1 year from today?
Well, inflation, I mean, I know we're beating a dead horse, but inflation, that's going to be the chief topic for the next over the next 12 months. All the survey of economists, all the surveys of consumers, they all say the exact same thing. Inflation is perhaps a permanent fixture of the post-COVID economy. When the Fed is printing, because look at the Fed, they're announcing tapering, correct? But the problem with their tapering is they're still adding, I think, about $200 billion to the balance sheet over the next 6 months. So that's more money being put into the economy. So that's creating more of an inflation. While the supply chain crisis reports I've seen, a lot of experts say that this isn't going to subside at all in 2022. If you look at the LA or the California ports, a lot of these ships are extending at a record high, extending into the Pacific Ocean. So right there you have the issue. China, they're having these quarantines because they're trying to have a COVID zero strategy. Therefore, these ships are at an all-time high, stuck at the Chinese ports. So you're having this back and forth issue where one side has a huge jam, another side has a huge jam. So that's also going to add to inflationary pressures. Another thing, employment costs. Employment costs are expected to go up again because of the excessive number of job openings there are, too few people taking these jobs. You have the record number of quit rates. I think it was 4.2 million in October. So that's not. So you have employment, you have supply chain crisis, you have a monetary expansion, fiscal spending. Biden's not showing any signs at all he's slowing down the fiscal expansion at all. So you have all these factors that are going to add to inflation pressures. And I doubt it's going to subside at all in 2022. So next time you and I talk, if I'm still alive by December 2022, we'll be talking inflation again. And you're going to ask me what's going to happen in 2023. I'm going to say, well, probably inflation.
And we'll see how much we've got stashed away in our mattresses then. Andrew Moran, thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
Now, don't go anywhere. Later in the show, we're looking at the major cases coming up in 2022 on our Talking Liberty segment. We also have a special New Year's Say What show with longtime host of this here Liberty Nation Radio, Tim Donner. But after this short break, we'll be right back talking with Joe Schaefer on what lies ahead for the future of the America First movement. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides. Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.